Welcome to the Oral History Podcast, which features stories from the oral history website voicesofoklahoma.com, where Oklahomans have given generously of their time to tell their life story for present-day listeners and for the generations to come. Our entire collection is available at voicesofoklahoma.com. By subscribing to our podcast, you will be notified of new Oklahoma oral history podcasts. So now listen to another interesting storyteller from voicesofoklahoma.com.
Jim Hewgley Jr. was an independent oilman who served 2 terms as Tulsa's mayor from 1966 to 1970. In his first mayoral election victory, he defeated incumbent Mayor Jim Maxwell, who was seeking a 5th consecutive term, and he defeated Maxwell again in 1968. Hewgley had been a registered Democrat until 1956 when he became a Republican, and was the first Tulsa Republican mayor to be re-elected. Hewgley was mayor when the city was governed by the Tulsa City Commission. Shortly after his election in 1966, the city doubled in area by annexing 100 square miles of county land. During his time as mayor, the city passed its first 1-cent sales tax and established the Port of Catoosa, following the passage of a $20 million bond issue to fund it. He was also instrumental in the start of the Metropolitan Tulsa Transit Authority and Tulsa Housing Authority. After leaving city office, Hewgley ran in 1972 for Oklahoma's U.S. House District 1 seat, but lost to James R. Jones. His son, Jim Hewgley III, served 3 terms as Tulsa Street Commissioner. This oral history interview was recorded May 19, 2009. Jim Hewgley Jr. was 94 when he died May 17, 2011. In this oral history interview, you will hear Jim Hewgley talk about his relationship with former Oklahoma University football coach Bud Wilkinson and former President George H.W. Bush on voicesofoklahoma.com.
Today's date is May 18th of 2009. If you'll state your name and your date of birth.
My name is Jim Hewgley. I was born on November the 7th in 1916, Election Day. Woodrow Wilson was reelected to his 2nd term, and thank goodness my mother didn't name me Woody.
Where are we today, recording this?
The old Phil Tower building, the building that Wade Phillips built and had his office on the top floor. Then later gave it to the Boy Scouts.
Yep. Let's talk about your background and how you came to Oklahoma. Your mother and father, talk about them and their names.
My mother and father were from a little town in Tennessee, Gallatin, Tennessee. It's right out of Nashville, pretty little town. He was a young, aggressive farmer, and he had several ventures in the farm business, and then the Depression of the 20s caught up with him. And he went west to try to find a different life. So he came out to Oklahoma in the early 20s and worked in the oil field. I mean, he worked out in the field, just wherever the rigs were, that's where he was. And after about 4 years, he came back and got us, the family. I have 2 older sisters. One of them is still alive at 96. The other one died at 88.
Did you state your father's name?
My father's name was Jim Hewgley, too, so I'm a junior.
And then your mother's name?
My mother's name was Margaret. She was from Nashville, Tennessee. Her last name was Corbett. And they were married in Gallatin. My oldest sister was born in 1912.
He'd been out here in Texas, in the oil fields.
Well, everywhere. Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, wherever the work was. I mean, they just pick up their family and move them to the next town and put them in the next school. This went on for a short while, and then finally he was working in Seminole. He had an opportunity to go to work for Tom Slick, legendary Tom Slick, who I'm sure you've heard of.
Tell us who Tom Slick was.
Tom Slick was the world's greatest wildcatter. He sold out when he was in his early 40s for over $40 million. And he was the king of the wildcatters, and I've got a lot of literature on him. He very generous, very close. I mean, he made no great show of wealth, but he did a lot of interesting things. He had come out here from Pennsylvania. He had 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, and I was in high school with. So it just goes on from there. My father stayed with him through the Oklahoma City field, and when Mr. Slick died, they started a company called Transwestern Oil Company, which later went into Sunray. Transwestern moved the headquarters to San Antonio, So he moved with them, but stayed in business with the two boys and myself, and made some oil plays, one of them particularly in Mississippi, the Tinsley field. We're close personal friends, too. All of them are dead but me.
Your father went back and he moved the family here to Oklahoma?
Yeah, he moved them to Oklahoma, wherever the rigs were. I think I went to school in about 4 different towns in Oklahoma. He would bring the family into a bigger town, and then he'd work in the oil field, and then in the summertime he'd come back and we'd be close together. When I was in the 7th grade, we moved to Oklahoma City, and I spent my 7th grade through high school and college living in Oklahoma City, and then later in San Antonio. Then I went in the Army.
So your elementary school, where was that?
Everywhere.
And probably made several moves in 1 year?
Yeah.
But then your high school, that was in Oklahoma City?
I went to Classen High School in Oklahoma City. Harding Jr. High School. Classen was a very famous old school.
And then on to college?
Went to OU. I got out of OU and went to work for my brother-in-law, who was a drilling contractor up in Kansas, and we just made the rig around there for a while, and then they moved it up to Illinois and over to Indiana. I stayed with that until I got into this thing down in Mississippi. We moved the rigs down there, and then I went in the Army from there and stayed for 4 years.
You remember where you were when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Yeah. I was driving from Jackson, Mississippi to Tulsa. All day long I heard it.
Then at what point did you enter the military?
I stayed out because I was working in the oil fields. I could have stayed out longer, but I went in 42.
So you got an exemption then because of the oil?
Yeah, for a year, and then I went in and served 4 years.
You would have been about 24 years old then, 25 in 1941.
Yeah, that's about right.
Tell us about your military. What did you do there?
I didn't get shot, and I didn't get shot at that I know of. I just did what they told me to do, and it was not very exciting, except for the final part of it. I took a troop ship from California, and we got to Honolulu, and they dropped the H-bomb. So we thought we'd all come home, but we kept right on going and got to the Philippines. Stayed there for a while, and then went into Japan. I spent Christmas of 1945 in Yokohama, and then got out shortly thereafter. By then, my family had moved to Tulsa, so I came here and found a pretty little girl that would marry me.
And what was her name?
Jocelyn Moser. We had 3 boys, Jimmy, Bobby, and Freddie. These kids were all teenagers when she died. Then I remarried. Eileen Warren, maiden name was Rooney, and she'd lost her husband. She had 3 kids, and they were all about the same age, and we've been married over 40 years.
Then your business, were you in the oil business then?
Yeah,
as you
all
came back
the time, in different phases of it. I operated some rigs in West Texas. By then we'd moved to Midland, Texas, after we married. I stayed in the drilling business until times got too tough, and I liquidated out before I went broke. And then just stayed in, made land plays and oil plays, and a couple of lucky things happened to me.
So you made some discoveries, did you?
Well, I was part of them. I didn't make them, but I was close by and managed to do that type of work.
That was your main source of income then, the oil business?
Still is.
And still is today?
Yeah.
How today?
Well, I have some override oil interest, some royalty, just straight out royalty. I do very little operating and just make investments, really.
When did you quit working for oil people? Somewhere along the line you transitioned out of it.
I guess it was just a natural family deal. I'd never thought of it that way when I got out, because my dad was killed in an automobile accident. I had to take care of his estate and do a lot of things like that.
Where did that accident happen?
Happened up at Wagner. We had a place up on Lake Gibson, and he had a bunch of kids and grandkids, and he got a head-on in the twilight of the evening. Killed he and his wife. My mother died in the meantime. He remarried. Killed them both, and a bunch of other kids that familiar names.
That would have been about what year?
Late 40s, early 50s,
Yeah. Following your career then, you're in the oil business.
I've really been self-employed most of my life after I got out of the drilling business.
Talk to us about all that self-employment.
Well, I did a lot of traveling, And I always had the office for what little activity I did have. I've done nothing spectacular in the oil business, we'll put it that way, but I've made a good living out of it. Then I got into politics.
Right. You got into politics while living in Tulsa.
Yeah.
How did you get into politics?
I'd always been interested in city affairs. When I lived in Midland, I never did have time to get involved there, but when I came here, Bud Wilkinson was a real good friend of mine. I mean, we visited him and knew him well, knew his family.
Talk about that a little bit. How did that come about?
When we had those drilling rigs on, we used to work those football players in the summertime, give them summer jobs. That's the way we originally got acquainted, and then we just had a lot of other things going, just good friends. He decided to run for the Senate. I was a Democrat then. He decided to run for the Senate, and I had done a lot of precinct work and that type of stuff. I don't know whether I decided or he decided for me to run the Tulsa part of it. I don't like to admit it, to have a candidate like that get beat. We made a lot of friends and got involved in politics real good. While I lived in Midland, George Bush became a real close friend of mine. And the Lidke boys from Tulsa, I don't know whether you ever heard of them, Pennzoil. The guys that sued Texaco and they got a $12 billion judgment. They're all dead now. They were Tulsa boys.
Let me bring you back to Bud Wilkinson. How would you have described him? What kind of a person was he?
He was just a super guy, you know, people's people, and he had time for everybody. There was nothing phony about him at all. He was right straight out.
So you had...
He's almost too good. I think he'd sneak off and drink a little whiskey once in a while, but he was so straight.
He wanted you to be the chair of his campaign in Tulsa County.
Tulsa County.
And you had to change your party affiliation.
Yeah, to vote for him.
And that's how you became a Republican.
That's when I became a Republican.
He ran and then, unbelievably, was defeated.
Right.
Talk to us about that campaign and why you think he was defeated.
One reason was the Aggies. The Oklahoma State alumni didn't like him. But the main reason that I think he got defeated, everybody has their own ideas. When he traveled in political circles, he'd go to one of these small towns, they'd have him out at the country club when he ought to be down to Kiwanis Club. You know, these big shots or the bankers, they all grab on to be with Bud Wilkinson, and he pretty well couldn't control that. And I don't know how hard he tried to control it. And then he got off on a high plane of government theory that was way over anyone's head about what can be done, how you do it. You know, he got beat.
Did he not talk about football at all?
Oh, yeah, because he was forced into that. I mean, you know, question and answer.
Right.
But so, he was a hell of a guy.
And he was defeated by...
Fred Harris.
That had to be a terrible shock, though, for you and everybody else.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. He couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it.
How did he take it?
Privately, I'm sure it just bugged him, but he handled it just like he did that day Notre Dame beat him down in Norman.
Yeah. Is there any major football game you remember with him coaching?
Oh, yeah, the game that broke his winning streak. He had won 47 straight games, and Notre Dame beat him 7-0 in the last part of the game. I'll never forget him walking off that field by himself. It couldn't have lasted forever anyway. Then I got involved with national politics because of George Bush and the other people that I'd met on the way up, and it was a lot of fun. In the meantime, I'd become real good friends with the now governor of Mississippi when we were drilling wells down there. His daddy was our lawyer, and he was national Republican chairman, and a lot of things fit together, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And that name?
Haley Barber.
Somewhere along the line, somebody talked you into running for mayor of Tulsa.
It was, I would say, the nucleus of this Bud Wilkinson group that I'd gotten together. Maxwell was a good mayor, and he was very popular. He'd just been there too long, I guess. Really, it was a fluke.
James Maxwell,
yeah.
He'd been several terms, hadn't he?
Yeah, I think he'd been there 4 or 5 terms.
Yeah. So you challenged him in the campaign?
Yeah, I didn't have any better sense. And like I told someone, the Tulsa world is still mad about it.
He was popular. We have the Maxwell Convention Center.
Yeah.
What made you think you should run against Maxwell?
I wasn't thinking very well that day. Well, it was just a bunch of these people that had gotten together, and they all became real good friends as a result of the Wilkinson election, really. And we're looking for something to do, and about that time I'd had my problems with my first wife being ill, and after she died, I needed something to fill that. You can't put your finger right on why, but it all happened together,
Yeah.
Then I ran for 2 terms.
You defeated Maxwell, but you think he'd been there so long that probably the town was getting tired of him?
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Who did you run against in the second term?
He ran again.
Oh, he ran again?
He ran again. I served that term out, and then Bob LaFortune took my place.
What were some of the issues back then as you ran?
Well, we were at the height of some of this race problem, and we were under a different form of government, too, you understand, commission form, and as opposed to what we got now. The race thing was the problem. These people were marching, and you just try to keep it calm, and we were lucky. We had some good, solid people out there in the north part of town and managed to keep it under control.
They were demonstrating on our streets?
Well, they were marching through town. They'd camp outside of town. One of the reporters asked me if I was going up and see them. I said, no, I wasn't invited. I said, I don't go when I'm not invited. They didn't come to me. They didn't come to town. We just managed to get through that period with some good friends, really, on the north side.
Yeah. You were involved in a number of discussions, I'm sure, with the north side and all to calm people down.
Yeah, I went to every church over there, I think. We had some good, solid leadership over there, and I think we do still.
Anything else that you dealt with? Streets?
Well, as long as you have streets, they're going to be an issue. But you see, the way it ran then, you had a commissioner in charge of streets. That was Bob LaFortune. Well, he'd take care of all the problems in that deal and have them solved and have them resolved before we had to make a decision in the city hall. We were fortunate enough to have several people like Bob LaFortune, Dean Langenheim and Jack O'Brien and people like that that looked after their deals, so there was very little politics involved in running the city. And really the mayor was more of a referee than he was originating, except general policy method. All of these federal programs were coming up. The Housing Authority, for instance, was started under our administration for all this low-cost housing we have. So I think it's been a fairly successful program. It seemed like everything went pretty calm. I had some nice trips to the National Conference of Mayors in Honolulu. But it was a fun time.
Was the city building anything back then?
It was sort of strange. City Hall, that complex down there, had been bid out, and the bids came in too high. They had to rebid them after I got in. That's when it was let, and that's about 1966, 7. We didn't have any sales tax. Had to pass a 1-cent sales tax. Most of the revenue the city was running on was the revenue the water department made by selling water. The old Dean Langenheim, who had been a professor at TU, or engineering professor, he'd pray for these droughts, sell more water, sell more water, build more streets.
That was one of the sole sources of revenue?
Yeah.
Selling water?
Yeah.
Who did you sell the water to?
To the city of Tulsa.
Okay.
All these surrounding towns still buy water from us. But the system, your water bills.
Yep.
You could raise a little money, raise your water bill.
Then you come along and propose a penny sales tax.
I appointed a committee of leading citizens to go over our whole deal and figure out what we had to do. We were reaching a crisis. We were running out of enough money from the water department, and the city was expanding. As a matter of fact, from the time I started running until the time I was elected, the city did that big annexation, about double the size of the city. So we had that problem to deal with. The only thing we had left was the sales tax, and that was not too popular. Of course, people had to vote on it. I'll never forget the year that we passed that. I was in the city parade, and I got booed all the way.
But it passed the first time around.
Yeah.
What was your campaign? I mean, why did you feel the citizens needed a penny sales tax? What was it going to go for?
Police and fire, mainly. That's something you can really hang your hat on. That was the main part of it.
So you sold it as public safety.
And we had some really high-powered leadership on that program, but the heads of all these major oil companies and the public utilities. We had lots of help.
Well, to pass the first sales tax.
Yeah. That's not a very good legacy, is it? I'd like to try it now.
Well, now 8 cents. That was a major undertaking. So were you booed long after that, or did they get over it?
Well, they got over it in a hurry. But it was a lot of fun those 4 years. We got to do a lot of things.
Talk about the annexation a little bit, because that was
an
issue.
It was an issue, and I really didn't even know what I'm talking about, because I didn't even know there was such a thing as annexation. Oklahoma City did a big one over there. At one time was the largest incorporated city in the United States. Then a lot of these other cities were going around, they were incorporating all these little cities and making it a city-county government. This was on the ballot. It passed to annex all that area down at Jinx. That took in a lot of streets, which we immediately had to service, had to take care of. That was the transportation part of it. Of course, we were selling them water anyway.
And to the west, in the Sand Springs area, you took in land there?
I don't remember just how that came down.
As we go south, you would have been annexing land at 71st, 81st?
Yeah, clear on out there. See, out there somewhere, they'd all run together, about where that Jinx Bridge was.
Yep.
I don't know enough about the geography, but Yale and all of them all sort of run together into the river bridge there. And you get into part of the city that we did annex, probably out about St. Francis Hospital, clear out beyond there.
So that was land that probably a lot of people thought, well, nothing will ever happen out here.
Well, of course, it all happened out there. That's what it turns out.
The Vietnam War was on.
Yeah.
During that time, I didn't know if there was war demonstrations in Tulsa.
No, we didn't have nothing.
I noticed there was a presidential visit. President Johnson came in August of '66, and you're pointing now.
Right there. See?
Oh, yes.
Get up and look in that picture. You can see Johnson, there's Paige Belcher, there's Fred Harris, Mike Maroney, and President Johnson and I.
Why did Johnson come here?
They're dedicating something down there. It was really, I think Edmondson was running for Congress over there, and he came down as a favor to him. And they came to the airport, and then they went off to some park or something that they were dedicating their interstate, some damn thing.
And here you were a Republican welcoming this Democrat president. You remember anything about Johnson? Did you speak to him?
Oh, yeah, just briefly. He's arrogant. He was not one of my favorites. About that time, shortly after, George W. began to come into play. And I went to the Republican National Convention, first one in '68, and I went to every one of them until, the one in Philadelphia when George Jr. was nominated. And we always had pretty good accommodations, being the mayor, the former mayor, and having known some of the mayors from surrounding cities.
Let's come back here to the Port of Catoosa, the authority there. How did you get involved with the Port of Catoosa?
This guy named Early Cass. He was sort of the granddaddy of it, and we became friends politically. He's one of the few Republicans. When they got that thing started out there, I don't know, somehow he got me on that board. And I stayed on it for over 30 years, I guess. And I was chairman from time to time.
But that was a pretty important bond issue that was passed in '67.
Yeah.
$17.5 million for the port. Was that a tough sell?
It seemed to go pretty well. I don't remember any controversy over it. It was pretty well spelled out. See, you were in that project with Kerr McClellan. It was probably one of the great things that's ever been done in this town. Some people have taken boats and gone all the way down. And the Delta Queen was in here twice.
The port was dedicated in '71. Mm-hmm. Richard Nixon came to town.
That's right.
Were you there then for that dedication?
That's up there somewhere, too.
You got a picture of that up here. There he is right up there on the right.
Yeah.
Well, that's with Bellman.
There's what Tom Stafford when he was coming home. There's Romney up there. I thought I had a picture of the Port of Catoosa, but I don't guess I do there.
You were very active on the authority. I believe you built some local business, working your contacts in the Pentagon?
Well, Maybe they gave me credit for it. We had some good contacts up there, and I can't take credit for something that I really didn't do anything except be part of.
Well,
of course, when Henry Bellman was the Senate, we got lots of attention.
Okay. Yeah. You had a good relationship, didn't you?
Yeah, he's a super guy, by the way. He's probably the best politician I've ever known. Old country boy. I remember when he started out, he'd speak from cards. He'd have about 3 cards, and when he ended, he had a whole stack of them. He goes, he's not well. He still lives out there in Round Rock.
And I interviewed
Parkinson or something.
Yes, he does. I interviewed him.
Oh, did you? Recently?
About a month ago.
Did you?
At his
How
farm.
was he? When he sort of fuzzy?
No. In fact, I spent about 2.5 hours with him. He was just very anxious to talk.
Well, he used to come over here to all of our functions, but he hadn't in a long time. He was very, very special. He really taught those senators some different habits. He was down at the office about 5 o'clock every morning like he's out on the farm.
Back at the Port Authority, though, they thought enough of you, they even named a tugboat after you, the Hewgley.
Yeah, I see it.
There it is. Probably your work with the authority and the Port of Catoosa, you look back on and say, I'm really proud or proudest of my work there?
Yeah, that, and then I did some private stuff that I was pretty pleased with, like St. Simeon's. I was on their board for about 30 years. The retirement home out here.
Right.
Also, I was very active in Holland Hall School when they went from little girls' school to girl-boys school. One of the reasons because those 3 boys. In those days, the schools really weren't very good. A lot of people were sending their kids to Culver and to Kemper and Andover and Exeter and Oklahoma Military. I decided that I'd rather have mine at home, so I helped build a school into really an outstanding place. If you've ever been out there or ever checked it out, it's among the top schools in the Southwest.
So you gave many years to them.
Yeah, I was on there for at least 25 years. But it was a lot of fun, too.
When man first walked on the moon, you were there for the launch, July 16th, 1969.
With Pascal Twyman, one of the Air Force deals, flew us down there. Pascal was president of the University of Tulsa.
Yep. Why was it that you were there?
Because I was invited. They would always have a bunch of people in. That was a big entertainment. That was one big party.
4 days later, then, after the launch, Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong stepped out on the Sea of Tranquility to be there for that launch and watch that happening.
It was just an honor to be invited down there. That was a pretty close operation.
As you stood there and watched that launch and someone asked you, what do you think of the status of space travel would be in 2009, what would you have said?
I said we'd probably be back to the horse and buggy. They wiped everything else out and started all over again. No, it's just unreal what has happened in a lifetime.
Yeah. Talk to us about the presidential conventions. Your first one, we said, was in
68, I
68.
think. Yeah. It was in Florida. Nixon was nominated, and the guy from Maryland.
Spiro Agnew.
Yeah, he's up there, too. He was the vice president. We took all the family with us.
Did you get involved in those conventions to any degree? You were a delegate, obviously.
Yeah, I was a delegate, and then one year when it was in Kansas City, I was on the finance committee for the convention.
In 68, Ronald Reagan got a few votes, too, then, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Were you always a Nixon person?
Yeah, I always had a great deal of admiration for Nixon. I just don't understand how he ever got into the switch he did as smart as he was.
Then in 76, Reagan and Ford.
That was in Kansas City. I think we were for Ford. He got it.
Bob Dole was his running mate. Then Jimmy Carter beat
Carter, yeah. Then Reagan came back and beat Jimmy Carter.
Yeah. Let's talk about George Bush, because you developed this close relationship with him because of the oil fields.
Well, I met him in Midland right after the war. And it was right after I got married. I was married in 46. Around 47, 48 is when it was. He came out there with a bunch of Easterners that came out and tried their luck and get out and get going, get away from the old folks. It was quite a mixture of people, remarkable people. George, of course, stood out, and I happened to be involved. He came out there in the supply business for a conglomeration of companies, and he represented them. Of course, he didn't stay that way very long. He was a fun guy. His first time to Tulsa, I don't know what year this was, he stayed with us at my folks' house and played in the Southern Hills Swingaroo golf tournament. Remember, I guess? This is a funny story because it's a big party is what it was. I mean, you played golf and had bars and, big party. After about 2 days, I came down in my back. I had a little back trouble, and I had to get a substitute, and I got Bobby LaFortune. I talked to him when he was in town the other day.
George Bush.
Yeah. He really doesn't look very good on TV. He's a super guy, and, of course, she is a real tiger. Well, I mean, Barbara, you don't want to mess with her. We saw them all socially, and I mentioned the Ledke brothers before. Later, George went into business with them. They were real entrepreneurs. They were really sharp guys. And it made him some money. Made George some money. His father at that time was a senator from Connecticut. He used to come out and visit. I think I was out there 7 or 8 years, then moved back to Tulsa when my father died.
So those were good times for you in Midland,
yeah,
weren't they?
All my times have been good. I haven't had a bad time yet, except when I lost my wife. I get to talking about dying now, and someone said, well, one thing about dying, he said, you won't know it happened. I said, well, I'd like to have about 15 minutes to look back over and see who came to my funeral.
When George Bush decides to run for president, you were obviously a big supporter of him.
Well, we did a lot of stuff for him. He had us at the White House. We had dinner up in the inner sanctum a couple times with him.
In the residential?
Yeah, and he's included us in some real nice things. Sent us on an international trip one time. We've seen quite a bit of him. He's really quite a guy. And this young one is, too, regardless of the press. He's a hell of a kid.
Did you get to be around him much?
I used to take him to Sunday school.
Where?
Midland. Not very regularly, but a few times.
Why did you take him to Sunday school?
Because I was going to church and his daddy wasn't, I guess. I had about 4 kids I'd take, all about the same age, and I would just take them to Sunday school and then downtown for breakfast.
So you remember George W. since he was about 6, 7, 8 years old?
He might not remember that, but I do. He's the one that got into baseball business, made the money in baseball.
Did you know him as an adult? Did you get to visit and be around him at all?
Very little. We left there and came up here, and Big George went to Houston.
Are you surprised, as you look back, where the Republican Party is today in 2009? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I'm not very happy about it, but I don't know where we got off the track. We had things going real good there for a while, and then we got to acting like Democrats. And instead of saving money, they started spending it just like the Democrats. I don't know where we stand now, but I think we've got some pretty bright stars. I think Newt Gingrich is the smartest one of the whole bunch up there. I don't know whether he can overcome his early problems or not. As a matter of fact, I don't even remember what they were when he was Speaker. But they might celebrate that sort of thing by now.
As you look back on the accomplishments, I guess I kind of asked you this before, but you stated it again, the accomplishments that maybe you're the most proud of, what would you say?
I don't think I've done anything that I'm the most proud of. It's probably my relationship with the Holland Hall School, because I saw it really from nothing to really something. Well, I did support too, but it became more of a personal thing because of my children and grandchildren. That may sound a little snobbish, but it's a hell of a place.
You watched Holland Hall grow then when they integrated boys and girls.
Yeah, from the time they started taking in boys around the 5th grade, and they brought them right up a year at a time until they graduated. But my first wife had gone there, and I think she graduated in the class of 38. I think there were 8 or 9 girls in there. Then after the war, this demand that the Tulsa school system wasn't very good, and some of us decided we'd do something about it, and that's the way it came out. Then we got this huge grant from the biggest foundation in town, the Chapman and Walters group. They have an endowment out there now. Before this stock market deal, they had about an $80 million endowment.
Students who would be listening to you talk now, advice to students as they set out in the world, wanting to decide what they would like to do, politics, government? Do you have any words for them?
Well, I still think there's some good days left out there. It's so different. I don't know how I would advise anyone to just have to keep your nose clean. But the morals have gone to hell. That's what bothers me more than anything. These people are having babies without getting married and switching around. I mean, I can see that in an overview from some of our acquaintances, friends, and whatnot. That's what bothers me more than everything. We're going to have a spiritual revolution, and I don't know how you get into that.
Did religion play a big part in your life?
It has, yes. I'm an Episcopalian. Go to St. John's. I've done everything out there, too. I've been on the vestry and warden and gone to their conventions. They don't always do things the way I would do them. They're harder to change than anyone.
What about Tulsa? What's special about Tulsa?
If you drive up, coming up from, say, the fairgrounds that way and look at that skyline, these buildings, I know you never think of it. These buildings are gorgeous. This Tulsa Club next door is a beautiful building. At Will Rogers High School. They're just treasures you can't replace.
And the fairgrounds.
I was out there placing a bet on the Preakness the other day. Have you ever been out there?
Yes.
I can't believe what they've done to that fairground. Yeah. Or where all the money comes from that goes in those machines.
You remember in the 60s, downtown Tulsa was just a bustling city.
I know, Main Street, Vandiver's, Bishop's.
Clark's Good Clothes.
Yeah.
Renberg's.
Then they built the Williams Tower and all that. I can't tell you what happened. Technology, maybe? Oklahoma City didn't amount to anything in the oil business, and now they've got more activity over there. We've still got some fine smaller companies here that really do well and are prospering. A lot of money in this town, and the most generous people that ever lived. I just can't believe the things that they do, the wealthy people that I knew all their daddies, like Kravis and Kaiser. Their fathers were real good friends of mine when I was a young man. And that Chapman estate, that thing is massive. The Mabee Foundation, and all the good those people do. It's just a special deal.
Back in the 60s, would Bill Skelly have been part of your life then?
Harold Stewart was a good friend of mine. You remember Harold?
Yes.
Well, he married a Skelly. Harold's wife was a Skelly. His two children and my boys were about the same age and they're good friends. I don't remember ever seeing Skelly, but I remember Ms. Skelly. She lived there at the end with Harold, and the kids were there a lot.
The oil dollars, like the Skellys, did they play a big part in the building of Tulsa?
Oh, yeah, they all did. Seems like in those days, if you found an oil field, you came in Tulsa and built a building.
Texaco was here then?
Yes, they practically had this whole building.
So anytime there was a need, those people stepped up, didn't they?
They all did.
What occupies your time these days at 93?
On Monday, I have lunch at the Summer Club. This is Tuesday. On Wednesday, I got White River Catfish. On Thursday, I play bridge. And Friday, I just sit on my butt.
We're sitting in your office here, and it's filled with pictures of the past. You're maintaining a family business here.
Yeah, I'm looking after it. We've got a trust I've set up, trying to leave something for the kids. And I take just a little piece here and there, something that's going on, just to keep your finger in it.
Yeah.
Nothing major.
On the wall there you have this plank from the platform from which the Honorable Dewey F. Bartlett took the oath of office as the 19th governor of Oklahoma on January 9th, 1967.
Mm-hmm.
You knew him quite well, apparently.
Oh, yeah, they used to live next door to it.
Here in Tulsa?
Yeah. Frank Keating, he was a good friend of mine, so I guess he still is.
Can you talk a little bit about Dewey Bartlett, what kind of a person he was?
Well, he was very intense. I mean, he was a tiger. If he get a hold of you, he won't let go until he gets it done. And a very bright guy and very able and very personable, people-oriented. I remember taking George Bush by to see him when George was running first in the early primaries, when he was dying then. And his kids are around here. Dewey Jr. is about 60, I guess. Then Michael lives up on the north side with the hippies, and then there's a girl.
And you say, where does Michael Bartlett live? Up in the north side?
Yeah, up on Reservoir Hill.
Oh.
Don't you know about Reservoir?
I do. But you said up there with the hippies.
I don't know. One day I didn't have anything to do, and I said, I never can find Reservoir Hill. I know it's right over there somewhere, between Cincinnati and Tisdale Turnpike. So, well, we'll just go. We just started turning up streets. I finally found it. There is a big spring up there, right on the very top, the reservoir. Have you been up there lately?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fascinating. I've got several friends that live up there.
It's a beautiful view of Tulsa.
Oh, yeah. Tulsa should have been over there if it hadn't been in Osage County, I think. You got about 3 or 4 counties that come together here.
How many grandchildren do you have?
Well, just had a new great-grandchild this morning, as a matter of fact. They got 11 grandchildren. Now, this is going to be 8 or 9 great-grandchildren.
Wow.
See, my wife's a Catholic. She didn't have them all, but her kids are doing better at reproducing than mine are.
Of your 3 sons, the grandchild that was born today, that came from...
her side. I have 4 sons. See, she had 1 and I had 3. She had 2 daughters,
okay.
6 of them.
When they all get together, that must be a good family time.
It's a lot of fun.
So how would you like to be remembered?
I don't know. Just remembered. At least for another generation. Probably the low point in my life. All 3 of my boys were hippies. Real hippies.
In the 60s, while you were mayor?
Part-time. Mm-hmm.
Where were they living?
Well, they were in college. I had 4 of them in college at the same time. One of them was at Duke, one of them was at Westminster in Missouri, one of them was at OU, and the other one was at this little school in Mobile, Alabama, and I can't think of the name of it. Never can. And then the girls were in Catholic school somewhere.
They were attending school.
Oh, they were going,
but they were...
bad boys.
They caused you problems?
Well, we solved them as we went along. One of them's been in the AAs for 15 years.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I did.
You've got a great image in our town, and you've got a huge family, and it's got to make you all feel good.
Well, I feel good. I'm not complaining.
I appreciate your time here today very much. Thank you for doing this.
Well, I enjoyed it.